the ICT for Growth webinars, so organised by them, so you'll be familiar with that. And what we're going to be talking about this morning is how you can harness artificial intelligence tools to maximize the growth of your business. So that's what we're going to cover, and we've got an hour and a half. But I'm not going to make you sit and look at slides that whole time. We've got video, we've got breakout sort of sessions, and we'll obviously have a quick 10-minute break just to grab a quick coffee, but maybe after about 50 minutes or so. So see how we get on. So time for a quick break. Lots to get through. So just let me tell you briefly a bit about me, just so that you feel comfortable, reassured that you're in good hands. A number of things I do, but they're the two books. That one on the right has just been published the beginning of the month. So 2nd of January it came out in the UK, and 25th of January in the USA. And the one before came out in 2019. And what I've basically been doing for 30 years is consulting clients, really big brands, Virgin, BT, Microsoft, but also lots of smaller organizations, one-man bands, small companies across all industry sectors. And I run my own business, which has been going since 2010, and that's called Zudicas, and that's a PR, social media, marketing agency. But when I got involved in AI, artificial intelligence, about 8-9 years ago, I set up AI in business as another brand under my own limited company. So I've been spending a lot of time in particularly the last 6 or 7 years, helping people understand what AI is, how it can be applied to business. And my books are not about, in a technical way, teaching people how to code or anything like that. They are the business application of AI. And as a result of that, I've been heavily involved with the All-Party Parliamentary Group, which is a task force looking at the adoption of AI in business. So that's what I live and breathe. And this is, we're expecting these people here, but at the same time, a number of people have also requested the recording. So if it ends up just being 2 or 3 of us, that's fine by me as well. This is what we're going to cover. The introduction, really, what is AI? How, what are the main benefits of applying AI to various business functions? That might be finance, marketing, sales, customer experience, HR, but also industry sectors. So we will go across a number of different industry sectors. And so I hope you'll walk away at 11:30 with a much greater understanding of what AI is, how it can be applied to business, how you can get started, how affordable it is, what some of the pitfalls are, what some of the big issues are regarding ethics and explainability and so on. So that's what we're mainly going to cover. Just come out of there for a moment. Is everyone okay with that? Are you okay with that as an agenda? Yeah, excellent. Stop me at any time if anything I say seems like jargon or doesn't make sense to you. I've got no problem whatsoever in doing that. So yeah, just stop me if anything, if you need any help with any of that. So let me carry on with that. Okay, so it always does that. It should start from the slide I left on, and it's jumped right down to the end, which is very, very bizarre. So let me come back to here. Right, no problem. So let's begin by thinking about what is AI. And I would sum it up really by saying that it's the science of really making data smart and helping humans to break down data and making the machines smarter so that they can help us solve complex business problems. So it's not about taking all of our jobs. It's not about a machine that can do everything a human can do, because no one machine can do that. There's different types of AI that can do something in a very narrow way exceptionally well. And here's a few examples. So on the bottom right, it might be a driverless vehicle that's got AI computer vision in it. That means that vehicle can navigate the roads and so on. It might be the interactive AI that could be a chatbot or a smart assistant. So even in your Amazon Echo and your Alexa, even in Facebook and Netflix, you've got elements of AI that are making patterns, that are suggesting things to people. And you may have heard of Alan Turing. And really what I'd say here is that AI has been around since the 1950s. And we call something that has passed the Turing test when it's indistinguishable from a human being. So let's say you get a phone call on your mobile, and if you're not even sure if that's a human or a bot, that's indistinguishable from a human being. So it's sort of past that Turing test. The idea is that call centers, sales teams, and others might be using that AI they might have learned from the best-selling customer service agent. We've just got Daniel joining as well. So let me just stop my screen and just say a quick hello to Daniel. Can you hear me, Daniel, okay? Hopefully Daniel he's on mute. Hopefully you can hear me, Daniel. I'm Katie, and I have just got started chatting to John and Gareth here, and so I will carry on. I'm not going to do that every time somebody joins, but hopefully you're all sharing my screen. We're giving a quick introduction here to what AI is. I've just covered the agenda. We've got 90 minutes with a quick break in between to really cover off what is AI, how is it being used across different business functions, and how is it being used in different industry sectors. So there's a quick overview there of what it actually is. Now, this is important because some people might be thinking, oh, it's too early, I don't need AI in my business, it's really not relevant to me. And if you'd been on this webinar a year or so ago, you could probably get away with saying that, but you can no longer do that. We can no longer afford to ignore AI. Here's why, from a personal society-based perspective. If we're operating again, aren't we? We're hoping to be at the other end of COVID, and in healthcare, AI has made huge inroads, and it helped the virologists, the medics, to come up with a vaccine for COVID in a year. In previous times, it could take 10 or 15, sometimes more years, to be able to do that. So in healthcare environment, we are all benefiting from it. We're identifying risks, we're looking at treatments. I was on the radio, BBC Radio Sussex, on Friday, and we were educating just the general people in the local area, what is AI, and giving an example of the first Sussex woman who's benefited from AI cancer treatment at a hospital in Surrey. And the AI was pinpointing exactly where the radiology needed to be for her cervical cancer. And it was being done in minutes. And it was really, really accurate. And she's been given the all clear now. And that would have taken, hours typically to do. So speeding things up, getting more accurate, not damaging healthy tissue, is going to have a big impact. This is a hotel a restaurant in the Far East. I think it's China. We'll see it in a moment. And it's just a quick video just to bring to life how AI is being used again in society. We'll come on to main business functions in a moment, but I just wanted to give you a quick flavor up front of the inroads that technology like AI is having. So let me, you should hear this nice and clearly. We've tested the sound. Here we go. stop it there because you get a good sense of what that is there. So it's not all robots. Like I said, it's not big shiny robot coming and taking our jobs. It's some of it is behind the scenes. So you saw that iPad there welcoming guests in, a robotic arm flipping burgers, all kinds of different areas of it. But we might be talking about something much more specific that's software based for marketing and sales in a moment. But I'm just starting by giving you a flavour of what AI is and how it's being used. Now, that was in China. This is in Milton Keynes, and this is a trial with the co-op, and it's the Starship, and it's basically a robot going around the streets delivering groceries. So it's got Internet of Things sensors on it to navigate the roads, but it's also got a lot of AI built into it with computer vision and so on. So that's going up and down the streets of Milton Keynes in a trial. So quite close to home, a bit closer than in China as well. Now, think about COVID and the impact that COVID's had on the hospitality sector, and what it's also had on skills because of people being, isolating and so on. And this was an article from the BBC looking at the hospitality sector and looking at this AI-powered barmaid who maybe can solve some of the problems of the short staffing. So you're telling the machine what drink you want, ordering it on screen, paying contactless, collecting your drink at a vending slot. So again, more examples of AI in a sort of local community sense. But the main thrust of what we want to talk about today is how AI is reshaping the core business landscape. And that's what I want to share with you. So, like I said a few minutes ago, had we been listening into this, and I was running this, I have been running these types of sessions for quite a few years, but if we'd been listening a year ago, you probably still could say, maybe my sector is not impacted so much. But the fact is today, we can't ignore it. And this is looking at a breakdown of the sectors and how they are deploying AI and who's ahead of the game. And we're still seeing the tech sector at 17% ahead of others, as you might expect, closely followed by financial services, and then other sectors as well starting to take advantage of this type of technology. And then you might say, well, how are they using it? What is it, actually the main thing that it's doing, the main benefit, the main focus area? And again, you can see the biggest percentage there is the customer experience, the engagement and the loyalty. And that's 57, followed by insights and intelligence. So rather than the big robotic arm flipping the burger or the driverless vehicle, we're really talking about sectors that are getting huge insights from this big data. Okay, our brains are incredibly smart, but they can't hold and crunch the data at scale in the way that these machines have been taught to do. And so the ability to do very personalized marketing, very personalized education, very personalized healthcare is a huge benefit of this type of technology. So again, it breaks this down. You see the purple color into customer experience. The brownie beigey color is automating. So it's automating processes, reducing costs. Now, there's a term used, I use it in my books, the 3 Ds, the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous. So you've got AI going out into, mining and into finding in a defense environment, doing dangerous things, detonating, old bombs and things like that. But you've also got it helping in a manufacturing setting, and in many other settings with processes and so on. And then others there, you look at the grey colours, detecting fraud from a banking perspective and logistics and many others. So that just gives you a bit of a sense as to the ways in which the AI is being used. So let's turn now. We're going to cover a number of different job functions, sales, marketing, finance, HR, but we're also going to then think about different industry sectors. So hopefully that will resonate with you and you will get a sense of the different ways that it's being used. So whatever sector we're in, even if we're in the third sector, even if we're in a charity, we've still got to achieve something. We've still got to get bums on seats or get food delivered out to a food bank, whatever it might be. So think of sales in the broadest sense. It might be charitable donations, or it might actually be sales of your product and service. And what this is doing here is integrating in with your CRM system. Might be a platform like Salesforce, and it's automatically inputting data from all different sources like email, calendar, a project management package like Slack, for example. And it's taking the guesswork away from what people do. So sales and marketeers in the past have had to maybe do some guesswork. There hasn't been the data to say, yes, this is the go-to-market strategy. This is what you need to focus on. So it's freeing people up. It's taking advantage of the AI and, working out where do you need to spend your time and your energy so that you've got a very efficient go-to-market strategy. Let's think about it in a comms sense, from a marketing and public relations and comms point of view. It's really about freeing people up. And I think this is across the board here, freeing people up to do more strategic work, to be more creative, to add more value. And that might be AI tools, again, not the big shiny robot, but an AI embedded tool that can convert speech to text, maybe for a press conference, that can turn any text into lifelike speech, that can produce reports and press releases. Sorry, it's jumped back. So those kinds of areas, I won't go through every single individual message on the slide there. It might be if you're trying to raise your profile and you're trying to come up with a story for a journalist, the AI can look at that, the previous articles that journalist has written, what the trends are, and help you come up with something that's really going to give them relevant news. More here, so it might be about identifying a brand logo through image recognition. It might be looking and analyzing what you're doing compared to your competition. So what's your reputation out in this big, wide digital world? And are there tools? It might be that some AI is flagging the consumer generated content on your site, or it's doing interactive activity for a promotion, for example. Okay, so they're just a few examples in some of the comms areas. And we've got our major media outlets globally turning to AI. For example, the Financial Times. And what they're doing is they want to be more efficient. They want to tailor their content. So they've developed this algorithm, this set of instructions using AI to predict trends so that they can make recommendations. Okay, so it's this idea of the machine learning, which is a subset of AI, being able to get data together and make it very, very efficient. Reuters, again, another organization in this world, has got all these millions of clips going back in its video library, and it's able to archive them in multiple languages and identify and easily navigate sections of the video. So things that have been very manual previously are being automated to give people really fast access. And then this final one here, the Wall Street Journal, it's got a tool, and the tool's called Narrativa, and this tool is writing the article. But the journalists are not out of a job. They analyze it. They decide, what impact is this going to have on the stock market? And, it's really making a big impact on their roles. So we're talking here, let me just say a couple of words here about it. So I've been running my current business since 2010. And in that whole time, I've used an accountancy tool in the cloud, a software as a service. It's only, £100 a month, and it automates all of my VAT and my annual return. That's not AI, that's software as a service, or SaaS as we call it. Because for 10 years I've been doing that, I haven't, my accountant is not out of a job, but he had to invest in new digital tools. Excuse me. And the same is true of this swathe of AI tools. If companies don't take advantage of these tools, they might go out of business. But they're not all going to be redundant because AI is coming in, but they might have a competitive edge. Okay, so that's a sort of example I like to give that shows you the evolution. And because of COVID, we've all had to digitize. Okay, so we've done the digitization, and now we're getting to the point where we can take advantage of some of these tools. So what I want to do, you spent that first half hour understanding, what is AI? So it's big data, it's machine learning, it's these tools that can crunch data, that can help, process information, but it's narrow. So at the moment, it's quite narrow, and one AI is very capable of doing something very, very smart. But we're not at that point where an AI can do everything a human being can do. We're nowhere near that, if ever. So now I want to spend the next chunk of time looking at different industry sectors and how they are taking advantage of AI. Excuse me. And I mentioned at the beginning that I've written these 2 books, and one just came out a couple of weeks ago. There are lots and lots of case studies. So what I'm drawing on is fresh, and there's lots and lots of proof points and illustrating, why it's relevant. And here's one this has been around a little while now, but just bringing it to life. So a hospitality brand, TGI Fridays, with the consent of the users, and that's a really important point, with the consent of the users, they're using this AI tool called Amperity, and they can do marketing and customer experience in a very personalized way at scale. So the AI crunches all of that data, pulls in information from social media, credit cards, point of sale, and then is able to deal with customers in a very personalized way. Now, that could be digitally, or it could be in the store, in the restaurant. And it might be the kind of data that says, previously, me, female, 40 to 55. Now it might be Katie King comes into our restaurant once a month on a Thursday evening. She orders ribs. Her daughter's vegetarian. That kind of level of data might really be what we're talking about here. So very personalized, which is the opposite of what you might expect. People think depersonalization, the big scary robot coming and taking your jobs. It's not about that. The customer experience professional, the HR manager, the finance manager, the MD, by using these tools, they are able to offer a much, much more personal service and have data insights that impact everything from the finance, the manufacturing, the marketing. Another example in the sort of tourism, hospitality sector, and this is a small restaurant. So they're in Japan, they're using AI to predict how many people are going to be dining in their restaurant up to 45 days in advance. And they can do that because they are able to tap into weather patterns, customer data, tourism information. And you can see there the stats in terms of accuracy and productivity. But another really important one, the bottom bullet point there, reducing food loss by 70%. So a green, a sustainability, really, really important factors that will allow that restaurant to survive and thrive, hopefully, because they are accurate and they know they're not going to waste food, they're not going to waste money, and so on. Let's jump around some other industry sectors now. Just having a quick drink there. This is in the education sector, and this is an organization called Century Tech. And what they're doing is using it in schools to have adaptive learning and to be enabling young people learning to do so in a very personalized way. So like I said before, personalized experiences, even in education. Now, what tends to happen with the curriculum is it can take a long, long time to change it. So it requires head teachers, classroom teachers to invest in this kind of technology. And it's happening all in many, many places in the world. And there are good examples of it in the UK as well, but it's not yet at scale being utilized in all of the schools. And I think that would change in time. Let's move around. I can see there's a message in the chat, so I might, yeah, no problem. Just talking about staying on mute. Absolutely fine. Thank you. So AI in accounting. So like I've mentioned, you've got AI being used in all these different business functions. And in finance and accounting, what it's doing is automating. So I said earlier, the 3 Ds, the dirty, the dull, the dangerous, automating data entry and categorization, helping the accountant to do these things quickly and accurately, but also spotting trends. It's digesting huge volumes of data in, very quickly to come up with trends. Then we are all going to benefit from this, really detecting fraudulent activity on our banking. So recognizing that fraud by supervised training. So teaching the machine how to do this and then letting it go off and spot these anomalies, these potentially fraudulent activities.
Katie,
and then,
would you mind if I interrupt, Brie? Just
please
a question.
Do, yeah.
I'd like you just to explore that bit about when you say teaching the machine and things like that, because I'm still struggling to identify the intelligent part of artificial intelligence. I get the massive volume processing, enabling us to look at a very personalized level. So vast quantities of data being processed more than ever. And that automation I get, but that's really just a continuation, an inevitable continuation of technology improvements in terms of processing capability. But what I'm still trying to get to understand is the intelligent part, and how you teach a machine. I mean, I picked up the word before, I've heard before, obviously, machine learning algorithms and things like that. So am I right in thinking that's really the heart of artificial intelligence? Because all this vast volume processing, that's just going to happen as whatever that equation is, where the amount of things a silicon chip can progress in, is doubles every 2 years.
Moore's law and so on. Yeah, absolutely.
Moore's law, that thing.
Absolutely.
But it's that how do you teach a machine to do something?
So yeah, it's a good question, John. So you've got different, of course, this is coding, this is programming, this is open source software, this is platforms like TensorFlow and so on. So the detail of how is down for the programmers to do. But using that programming language, they are inputting data, they are training it. For example, they would code it and they would come up with the different algorithms, and they, for example, would work for 6 weeks with, let's say, in a call center, the salesperson that gets the best sales, and they might program the successful behaviors into the machine. Okay, so that it isn't intelligent to start with, it is learning patterns. So the machine is being, garbage in, garbage out. So the machine is being taught, by it being coded and being taught with that programming language. If, this equals that, and if we do this, this is the scenario, and so on. So, but then with machine learning, this subset where it's actually able to then go off and replicate that and find more patterns. So vast amounts of data then being told, we want you to find patterns where this might not be the correct one. So this anomaly in the past meant that the spending patterns of somebody might be analyzed over 10 years, and it could see, I might go on holiday to Turkey once a year, and it would be taught that, but then it would have so much more data programmed into it and learn that actually all of a sudden someone goes on 2 breaks in Europe, and it might find a pattern to say, this is what that person's doing, or that person's just had a salary increase. So it will be able to crunch that level of data. That is the ability of the machine to just be able to intelligently process that, because it's been taught how to, and it can cope with volumes of data that we can't.
And finding optimal solutions and
exactly. Absolutely. So one person like me, TGI Friday example of ordering, etc. One, it might be a really smart waitress or a manager of a restaurant that can keep in their head 100 customers and their patterns and know their names and their kids and so on. But that machine is being taught to deal with that for online marketing, or even to be in an iPad that the server at the front of the restaurant, and that could be millions. So that's where it's just super intelligent, because it's personalization at scale. And that's really what we're talking about there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And that again could be in all industry sectors, in all different functions. The HR manager being able to do that and come up with a personalized benefits package for 20,000 employees, and to know from their history what their training's been, and to have all of that together. That level of intelligence really is what we're talking about. Where it can go in the future is another thing, as quantum computing and other things kick in. But at the moment, one AI can be taught to do all of that marketing. Another could be taught to, like you say, in a very monotonous way, just flip those burgers in, but different levels of it. Okay,
that's great. Thanks, Katie.
You're very welcome. Okay, so let's move on from there. So I guess what I'd say here really is that you've got established players. We've got banks, financial institutions that have been around for a long, long time, and many of them have adapted very well in recent years. You saw in the stats earlier that they're ahead of the curve, with taking AI on board. But it's ripe for the tech disruptors to come in. And so I said that AI has been around since the 50s with Alan Turing, and we've had all these AI winters. We're in an AI summer now, the last year or so, because you've got the ingredients there. You've got the data. Before, we didn't have enough data. Now we've had 10, 15 years of smartphones that have given us all this incredible data, social media, etc. And we've got cheap processing power. As a result of that, big money, venture capital, and lots of startups. So here's an example, a fintech startup that's developed this virtual assistant that's really enabling the consumer to reduce their debt, to think about their loan, to do diagnostics, their own healthy finances. And so it's really personalized education, personalized financial services. And the word really is smart. So the banks can, so I interviewed for my first book the head of AI at the Royal Bank of Scotland. And he said, we used to treat customers as just big homogenous groups of people. It might just be, 60 to 80-year-olds, or just a segmenting by an age bracket, or by towns and cities and so on. But this type of AI is enabling people to give, if people want it, to give them a very, very personalized service. And this is the kind of data and the kind of benefits, that it's giving them. So at every level of AI, in a bank, from the front office right to the back office, there is the potential for the AI to improve the experience and to improve the back office processes. So in the back office, like I said a few minutes ago, we might be doing the fraud, the cyber security tracking, because it's cracking that big data and making patterns. It might be the biometrics for authentication. It might be in the bank. It might be some kind of bot that's doing facial micro expressions. It might be a virtual loan officer, like a humanoid robot in a branch that's there to serve customers. And then it might even be things like, detecting your smile, facial recognition, so that you can begin to have a conversational chat for basic services. So we've got these services that are automating and improving, and then escalating the more important areas to an agent, to a human agent. Okay, and I think that's really important. So it's not, again, completely taking away, but if a bank can't afford to have, because there isn't demand, sorry about the noise, that will disappear in a moment. If the bank can't afford to have the, a bank in a small town because there just isn't the demand for it, then maybe this kind of, it might be going around on a van, a bit like you have the mobile libraries. It might be Mondays and Wednesdays, it comes to it, and it has one member of staff, but maybe it has a couple of these conversational bots helping some of the basics as well. So I can just foresee a different way that it is being utilized. Let's move on and have a look at financial services still, but this insurance space. So lots of usage here, and it falls into a number of different categories. It might be pricing and underwriting. So it might be that pricing being done in real time based on usage. Maybe in a claim, let's say you have a crash, the algorithm can route that claim. Maybe they take advantage, take a picture of the damage, upload that from their smartphone to this app with their insurer, and maybe they're given an instant quote, and they're assigned a policyholder, agent, and it's about reducing the time that it takes to resolve that claim. So it's about, processing. It's about, so it might be about saving money for the insurance company because things have been automated a lot more, but it might be about a better experience for the customer as well. So that's an example of it in insurance. If we look at it in the public sector, in local authorities, for example, it could be, and I used to live, as one example here at the bottom where I used to live in Enfield, so that might be a chatbot. Again, routine inquiries being handled, doing pre-screening, for example, of planning permission, might be self-certification for building control, that kind of thing. In another example, it might be identifying at-risk families so that the local authority can intervene quickly and identify what might be a high-risk situation. It could be a chatbot with parking permits queries or penalty charge queries. So you can see here the ability of the AI to reduce call times, to make the local authority much, much more effective. And again, you might say, well, it's dehumanizing it. But if the person making that query is no longer having to hold on the phone, is being dealt with efficiently, and it's personalized, I think in time they will really buy into this. So it's about getting over that initial hurdle of it being a bot. But, you know, I particularly think about the local authorities and how you can be held. I dread ever ringing BT, you know, because they're so huge and they haven't joined up all the dots, and you can get passed around department to department. If they had this technology, they would be able to deal with me in a much more effective way. So a couple more examples here, and this is still the public sector, and Deloitte have broken down the benefits into 4 different approaches here. So I'll just whiz through these quickly with you. One of them is relieve. So it's about alleviating the admin burden, okay? Saving time, saving resources, automating tasks that enable the human agent to do higher, more value add activities like data entry, answering queries, and so on. So the first one is relieve. The second one is sort of splitting tasks up, you know, breaking them down into different parts. Again, similar from a, you know, is this going to be automated? Is this going to be augmented in some way? Some of it might be a replacement. So some of it actually might be replacing tasks that don't need the oversight of a human agent. And that might be very repetitive tasks that follow simple rules that the AI is able to do. And then the last one there is that augmenting. The AI isn't going to replace, it's going to augment, it's going to work alongside people to complement their skills. And that's what Deloitte, according to Deloitte, is that magic piece. It's human and machine coming together, coming up with faster, better results. And you know, that could be across all different aspects of business there. So again, big money saving, reducing call volumes, savings in money. They're the main reasons that they're using it. Resolving issues, offering 24-hour a day service, and gathering data. Okay, so within the next year or two, we're seeing many councils having that chatbot strategy and AI strategy in place, you know, which is encouraging. So I want us to just do, if it's okay with you, what's the time now? It's 1:45. So let me stop sharing my screen for a moment. Let's combine this, a quick 10-minute maximum, time to grab, you know, coffee, comfort break, and also what I'd like you to do, and then we'll discuss it if everyone's happy to take their so let's come back. It's 1:45. Let's come back at 5:02, and in that time we've got a quick coffee, and we're thinking about maybe 1 or 2 examples of the things that we do that we think AI might be able to support us with. So how do we think AI could benefit our business? Let's just think about that for a couple of minutes and come back in 10 minutes, having had a quick comfort break. Is that okay with you all? Can't hear you there.
Well, have a go at it. Yeah.
Have a go. Yeah. So rather than just a 10-minute break, 10-minute break and a quick exercise, just think about it. You might say, not sure it is relevant to me yet, but maybe from some of the things I've given an example. Anyway, so I'll give you 10 minutes and see you then. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, another minute or so. I'm ready when you are, but just make sure I did say 5 too, so I'll give you a minute or two.
I'm ready whenever anyone else is, Katie. So yeah.
Thanks, John. Yep. Gareth there as well.
Good.
Excellent.
Isn't it amazing how many emails you can get during receive during a half an hour away from the screen? There we are.
I purposely didn't look at mine. Otherwise I'll get too distracted.
It's frightening.
Hello, Daniel. Nice to see you there.
Morning, you're right.
Hi, really good. Where are you based, Daniel?
I'm based in Bradford. I work
Okay.
for Innovate UK Edge, so I'm based in the Yorkshire and Humber team.
Fantastic.
Here, so.
Fantastic. Good.
Nice
Are you
sunny
okay so
morning.
far? It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, nice blue sky for a change. Really gorgeous. Are you okay so far with what we've covered? And you think you only didn't miss too much at the beginning there?
No, it's been really good, really useful.
Good,
Katie.
good. Yeah.
Really good.
So we've covered a bit about, what is AI. I hope everyone's clear on what it is, and certain business functions and a few industry sectors. So let me just pull back up my slides for a moment, just to see this. Bear with me. I'll take it off in a moment, but I just really want you to think about, what's a problem you might have, and how do you think AI might actually solve that? So just a couple of minutes. Let's just chat that through. Who wants to go first? Doesn't mean you've got one, but it might be you're thinking, not so sure. That, yeah, love to hear what you have to say. Who's happy to share that first?
Hey, so yeah, we've got obviously looking at sales and looking at trends, or looking at past trends and looking at past clients who are going to spend, and keeping that relevant and reminding you of certain sort of peaks and troughs within sales. How would AI look to deliver that information? How would you use AI to look into that information? For instance, we use Pipedrive, which is a CRM. How would you look back at the data that's being put on there as one deals and things like that, and deliver that in a way that's targeted and focused?
Good question. There's a few different ways. So there's off-the-shelf products that can do this. And I don't know if you know the Einstein. So you've got sort of Adobe Einstein, which is a CRM package that uses AI to find those patterns. You've got IBM Watson is one of the big players in this, and you've got Microsoft Azure, and so if it's worthy of the expenditure, then you could have your own tech people working in open source and coming up with developing exactly what you need and programming it to tell it, we need to know this. So there's bespoke ways of doing it. There's off-the-shelf packages. And I'm going to show you after the break, after we've talked this through, a number of different packages that can do that kind of thing, that can analyze it. I mentioned one of them earlier in it. So it might be that there's a CRM sales package that does exactly that. So we need to go off and explore a few of them, or you can program something yourself to give you exactly the data. So, it's looking at trends, and it's looking at tuning into how long it might be, looking at how long people stay on a certain website, how, page of a website, how open rates, it might look at conversions, it might look at competitive activity. So it'd be a whole range of different factors that show how well you convert, how well maybe your competitors do. It might look at where you've spent your time on certain industry segments that you deal with, and it might actually say you keep spending money reaching this industry sector that you think you get, but actually that's a fragment of your sales, and you're spending too much time, and therefore you need to spend more money on this. So it's tuning in to all kinds. I can't tell you exactly how it does it, but the different parameters of understanding, targeting, and effectiveness, and stretching you to maybe think about, there's an industry sector over here where people have similar ways and needs, and you should maybe try that, and it would analyze that data. But really it's trends and patterns that maybe you can't see because you haven't crunched enough data to really come up with those insights. But no, it's a good question, Gary. Thank you. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I think from the obviously, just to make it clear, I work for Innovate UK Edge, so we are essentially business advisors to companies in a number of different sectors. And I think one of the things which we are finding it hard at the minute is what is the perception of AI? I'm sure you get this all the time from businesses, and I'm still not sure. Even some of the larger companies we deal with, they actually know how it can affect their business in a positive way. And I'll give you two kind of examples. We deal with a lot of manufacturers because of the makeup of our region, and it's how it can affect the kind of lean management, the processes, improve performance of the operationally, as well as we said, you know, kind of look at the sales and forecast what's coming in, and you know, the whole
I think you're right. You're right. Very much so, Daniel. Manufacturing has been quite slow. I did a very detailed report. I won't name who it was for, but for a very big player in the manufacturing sector, and did a very detailed report for them on all their competitors globally across packaging and all different industry sectors within manufacturing, and showed some of the tools and some of the players. And at first they were quite skeptical, and the body language and everything was exactly as you say. But when their eyes were opened, not just about, like you say, lean and the automation of the manufacturing, but the wider picture of, like, every industry sector, including manufacturing, has to also do marketing, sales, finance. And when they could see that there were packages that could do all of this for them, as well as operationally things that they could use for the manufacturing automation, their eyes were opened. But I think, unfortunately, the media has done so much damage because think of the hype, the Gartner hype cycle. When we were in that innovation phase, we had the peak of paranoia and so on. And it was because we weren't yet at that point where there were loads and loads of case studies. And so the media didn't have enough to write about, but they had to write about it. So they wrote about HAL and Terminator, and the novels and the films gave them good fodder for that. Slowly, you know, with the support of organizations like yourself and others, people, and I go into schools and colleges are teaching it. Slowly people are realizing, actually, this is in our world already. Like I mentioned, COVID, you know, Facebook, in our Amazon Echoes, Netflix is using it all the time. We're hearing it on our mobiles, where we're getting calls from these agents. We're hearing about driverless vehicles. Electric vehicles are starting to, you know, finally sort of, you know, not necessarily take off at scale, but we're becoming more accepting of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a bit of a Wild West out there, because there are so many companies that just are lobbying these companies, and they don't know who to turn to. So I think that is part of the problem. It's still quite early days, and so there are and the law and the ethics, we're going to come on to that in a minute, is still a lot of work to do.
So, absolutely. And I think it's like anything in business, it's how much time and financial investment are they going to have to put into something, as opposed to getting out of it short term, because obviously we've been through the COVID and the Brexit, which hasn't helped. So it's kind of just prioritizing, and it's, you know, from my point of view, it's getting companies to really look at AI in a different way and take it on board now.
And that's why I'm breaking it down. I'm not saying you've got to come in and do a £15,000 project for a call center agent. You might be spending £50 a month on some AI marketing that might make a massive difference. So there's different levels of it. Let's hear from John, and then we'll move on, conscious of time.
I think it's about companies finding the opportunities. I mean, in my own business, I'm a sole trader. I write big grants. I cut grants applications. I can't see any actual application for myself, but I just put myself in the position of a recent client who's an online gaming company. Okay, and they've already got, you know, a substantial customer base. I mean, it's clearly an opportunity for them if they've got the right tools, as you know, Gareth was asking. You know, what are these tools that identify these trends, etc. To, for example, pick up on which which clients from which socioeconomic groups or whatever, and with which products optimizes that company's revenues, for example.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then with that information, targeting similar individuals and similar socioeconomic groups or whatever with particular products.
Exactly.
Rather than just leave it up to the customer to discover a product and say, yeah, I like that, actually to target them. But that is based on having, already a relatively substantial customer base, and the tools, as Gareth was asking about, how you pick up and identify them. So I think it does require some minimal or minimum level of activity in the organization.
I agree. But your bid writing, just like I showed some of those PR examples where the journalists were using tools that did some of the writing, there might be one. Again, your language and the level of detail you have to go through, there might be one out there that does bits of it, or it might be you're sitting in, let's say you sit in on a briefing meeting, and you could use, for productivity purposes, a simple tool like Otter AI can take a 1 hour or however long Zoom meeting and take all of that voice and put it into a report for you. So I think there are things that we will start to all just use for whether we're sole traders or a small tiny business like me, But anyway, let's carry on. That was useful. Thank you. I just wanted to get you thinking about your own businesses as well. So let me carry on with the last. Can you all see that? You should be seeing that. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's move on and think. So we've touched on these as I was answering some of your questions about who's doing this. Big established tech players, Amazon Web Services, AWS, TensorFlow, free open source software, the Adobes, IBMs, Google AI platforms. But then you can drill down into a job function or business function like marketing or sales or manufacturing, and you could find a whole plethora of these AI technology companies. So it requires a little bit of due diligence on your behalf. But what I try to get people doing is to think about processes like a monthly meeting, and someone's charged with going out there and doing a bit of research and maybe having a watching brief on the competition. Okay, but here's a few of the tools that are out there on the market. I'm not recommending them, I'm just bringing them to your attention, and I have no vested interest in any of these tools. I've seen most of them, but I'm not saying you have to go and use these. It's just a flavor. So it might be marketing, it might be about that data that says, this is what you need to write about. This will cut through the noise. This will resonate because it's relevant. So it's telling you what to write about. And that might be really good for that marketing example we talked about there earlier, Gareth, that sales and marketing example. So how do we get buy-in? How do we resonate with people? This one got the Gartner Cool Vendor Award a couple of years ago. And again, it's about what's our content strategy for sales? How can we benchmark what we're doing compared to our competitors? So like I said before, we can't do AI without data. So we can't do AI unless we're digital. And when we're digital, we're on these different platforms. And so there's an element here of the digitization and the social media and the share of voice being, if you like, managed and gauged by the AI for sales. So content research, ending that guesswork, not that finger in the air. Let's think about being and sponsoring this and doing that advert and going there. This is what we need to do. This is where our customers are. Let's tailor what we have to them. And again, we've got tools using AI that gather information and come up with a brand, and they give you a design kit and logos and imagery, and they're helping you come up with a brand to target the customers that they believe are right for your business. So these are sales and marketing types of opportunities. Brandwatch has an AI assistant called Iris, and it's doing sentiment analysis. So positive, negative, neutral. what is happening about your brand out there. What are the potential opportunities? What are the potential threats? How are you performing against your competitors? Here's a more of a PR based one. Again, you might spend money, you might have an in-house person doing some PR, or you might, have an agency. Big brands certainly do. Are they effective? Are they getting the best message out there to the journalist community? So again, it's leveraging the data and indexing and helping you actually draft the messages as well. So it's not just looking at patterns, it's actually a communications tool to help you draft. So this is another example. It's digesting millions of documents in multiple languages to come up with this intelligence to flag a potential crisis. And this is being used by admittedly some of the bigger players in the world, the Deloittes and those sorts of people. This one here, it's trying to help you co-create a newsletter. So coming up with content and working out, how does that need to be used. This one is for e-commerce, and it's helping the brand come up with modeling and segmentation, all these thousands of data points, helping the teams to understand what's that predictive model going to look like, what effectiveness is this advert having, and so it's actually saying, a bit like the A/B testing, this will work better with this particular target audience. This one's a chat bot, so this is analyzing thousands of conversations and helping the agent to come up with the best response. Okay, so the model is being trained so that it's tuned into the best way of handling it. So it's doing sentiment analysis, it's integrating in with the back end, it's being taught, it's being trained, it's being given sort of net promoter scores and all kinds of things. So this is like a chatbot, a conversational AI that many sorts of organizations are looking for. Now, this will blow your mind. There are ways that this is evolving, that's going into a space that not everyone's comfortable with, which is sort of like a digital employee, where it might be an agent that has all different roles, that plays different mimicking of the hiring process and so on. So it's almost like an avatar that certain organizations are using for their human resources and so on. And there's a thing called digital people. So I don't want to go too far down this track, but there are moves, and think about the metaverse and think about where AI ends and augmented reality and virtual reality come into play. This fourth industrial revolution is pretty epic when it really sort of goes into this zone. So, but again, it's a space that for some people is a stretch too far. But this is Chorus AI. So it's coming up with insights about opportunities for sales, areas where you can improve, areas where your sales team maybe can be benchmarked, where they need the right kind of training. So these sorts of tools are out there in the market. This one is an IBM, part of the IBM Watson package, and it's generating reports for you. It's asking questions. It's coming up with all kinds of different scenarios. Another one here for sales automation. So CRM platform, and it's doing automated notifications. It's telling you where you can upsell. It's tracking your sales at an individual customer level. And it's looking at that pipeline and working out how you can optimize it. What might your pricing strategy be? So, these are the sort of tools that if they sound of interest, you go away, you do a bit of due diligence, you get a free demo, you make sure that they are, they have a track record, you know, in your space and so on. So I won't go through every single one of these, but, you know, you can see with a lot of these, without getting too technical, it's low code and no code. So actually some of these packages for small companies that don't have sophisticated IT in place, it can actually be done very, very effectively and actually really make a difference to the sales and marketing. John, I was talking at the end there about Otter AI, and I have a girl I play golf with, and she's a tiny business, just a one-man band, and she does minutes of meetings, believe it or not. She sits and listens to 3-hour meetings and has to do the admin and the minutes of the meetings. And I told her about this package and she absolutely loves it. And she's using Otter AI to do this live transcribing of the meeting. So again, just, you know, scheduling tools and productivity tools that are using AI. Okay, so for the last...
Yeah, sorry, just a question there.
Yes.
You mentioned about some programs needing no code and some needing low code earlier on. So we're at a very early stage of looking at implementing certain things, building our management information system and looking at automation, and also looking at what's available AI to help the processes within our business. Obviously, if we're going to be looking for somebody to be doing or looking to develop that area and looking at coding side of things, obviously there's a lot of coding languages out there. Which are the most common used in this area of AI?
So it tends to be the open source, and also, you know, Python and TensorFlow.
Yep.
They're the core ones. And what it's worth you exploring is, and Daniel might know, I don't know if Daniel would know about this, but there are grants that are available where, I don't know the name of them, John, you might be able to Google this, but where a university has PhD PhD students who get assigned to a small business to come up with that kind of a solution. And the cost of that program, it might last a year, whatever it might be, is 75% funded by that program. So I know that there are grants available that can match small businesses up, you know, with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where's your local university, Gareth?
It'd be University of Hull.
Okay. If you contact University of Hull, I know that they have a large AI kind of department, and they've got the thing called, from what Katie said, KTPs, Knowledge Transfer Partnerships, where, as Katie mentioned, they work in conjunction with R&D, PhD students, and they work with industry to kind of help solve things from both kind of ends, help the student, help yourself. So if you contact them, it's a KTP that you might be
Knowledge
interested
transfer
in.
Program. Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I knew there were those sorts of things, and that could be a big boost, you know, financially.
Yeah.
And in a way, you shouldn't need to worry about how it's done. It's more, what is it doing? How is it effective? And that's the bit that they will focus in on. Okay, so I don't want to just blow your minds with, oh, there's this supply, there's this supply. I want us to finish off for the last 10 minutes thinking about, how do I get started? Okay, so this looks a bit, whoa, there's a lot on this one slide. In my first book, I took a year and I interviewed many different tech disruptors and many brands and people at Innovate UK. They were featured in it and so on. And I came up with this scorecard for success. So I won't go through it in detail, but basically 10 areas. You give yourself a score of 0 to 5. And depending on what you come out with, up to 50 points. In the middle there, maybe you're transitioning. Maybe some of the organizations you work with are very traditional, or you get 35 points and you're transforming. And the sort of 10 areas really are, for all of you, this is relevant. Do we have the right mindset? Do we have the buy-in from the board or the management team? Are we going to do a business case for this, or are we just going to jump into it very tactically? Are we going to do, number 4, some experimentation, some proof of concept? How are we going to collaborate with other departments? 6, do we have the talent in-house? Can we reskill? Can we buy in? What grants are available, etc. 7, what kind of culture do we have? Is this going to change our culture? How do we remain innovative? And then 9, we're going to touch on in a moment, what's the wider piece here about ethics, compliance, and so on? And then finally, do we have a roadmap in place? Okay, so in your own time, if we had a longer session today, I would get you doing this as an exercise, but you can do this in your own time. I'll get you a PDF of these slides through Mark and Sadia, and that can be sent around to you, and then maybe with your teams or by yourself, you can do it. And then in my second book, which came out a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot more behind this sort of just these words, but I came up with this standardized methodology, and similar, but it's about, have we got the right strategy? Are we devoting the time? Are we using it to augment what we do, and so on? So similar words there around standards and resources and being digital and so on. So a minute ago, I said to you about you need to have a watching brief on the competition. So AI, for some of the organizations you're involved with, or John mentioned a client, that gaming client, maybe AI is on their 2, 3, 5-year plan, but it needs to be sooner than that. And you need to make this part of your modus operandi, the way you work day to day. And so maybe it's about changing a behavior. Maybe it's about somebody in the team coming to the team meeting weekly or monthly, or the collaborative team meeting that all of a sudden is sales and marketing and CX all coming together and thinking, right, which tools are we going to go away and check out? We're going to have a watching brief on the competition. Maybe we're going to do a proof of concept. So something like this might give you a bit more impetus to turn it into, more of a short-term plan. Okay, so most of what I have been saying is quite positive. I know that. I'm quite a positive person, and I've obviously looked to show you the positive ways in which AI is impacting. Now, we do know that in the coming few years, there will be a big displacement, and the division of labor is going to be huge. But again, the upside is that 97 million will be growing, areas of growing demand. And so then there is a net gain there, isn't there? The 85 million to the 97, there's a net gain there. But some of the data entry, assembly, general operations, material stock keeping will start to be decreased in demand as people use these tools. But it doesn't mean, looking at the growing, it doesn't mean we've all got to go and learn to become data specialists or, information security analysts or IoT, but we need to make sure that they're in our organizations and that they are being taken seriously so that our organizations thrive. But we are seeing a fifth approximately of the global workforce where tasks are going to be automated and new jobs will be created, just like we've had in the last 10 or 15 years with social media and websites and programming and, the internet. I started work in '89, the internet didn't exist. I became digital very quickly. Now I've been ahead of AI very quickly, and I'm 55. So we have to keep reskilling and changing our mindsets and using tools and being part of this world to stay ahead. This slide is reassuring because this is saying these are the skills we need. We don't need to all be data scientists and code. We need the things that the machine can't do. We need the analytical, complex, critical thinking, originality, creativity. These are the bits that at the moment, I would hope for some time to come, one AI cannot do all these things that our really, really smart brains are able to do. So these are some of the areas that we need. And this is the World Economic Forum. This is not some random article from, you know, the Times or whatever. And I just want to end by thinking a little bit about ethics as well. So 4 pillars, there's a huge swathe of information out there now, the last month, the last 6, 12 months, and the last year or two, that we need responsible AI. We need to be looking at it organizationally and operationally. We need to make sure that systems are trustworthy and explainable, and that from a reputational point of view, we can articulate that. Now, this bit's caught up with, is catching up rather, with the technology. You know, there's been big moves to have transparency of algorithms. There's been GDPR, you know, for some years that's had clauses in it to state that we need to be transparent about our use of data, which very much relates to AI as well. And I think it's quite encouraging that globally, more organizations are joining forces and are working collaboratively to ensure that there is responsible development of AI, so that we don't end up with the doom and gloom of what the late Stephen Hawking talked about, and what, you know, Elon Musk and others talk about. So, you know, responsible AI, governance, the future of work, you know, Innovate UK obviously plays, you know, a role in that as well. Now, I want to end just by really saying that doesn't matter what age we are, we need the right mindset. And this could apply to coping with COVID a couple of years ago and to dealing with a new technology like AI. It's that shock and frustrated and denying it's there, and, you know, maybe even getting quite down and depressed and low about it. But then gradually we experiment, we make some decisions, and it becomes integrated into our lives. So, you know, I just really wanted to end by saying that it doesn't matter what age we are, we all have to accept that these types of technologies are going to come into our world, and that we have to upskill our teams and ourselves and be open-minded and do what I put in that framework and do some proofs of concept. So I hope that's been useful for you. I've got a few minutes just for any final questions that you might have.